all the best sports clips from around the world. Is this your first time checking out a video? Please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. So without further ado, let's get into it. We're watching a clip of First Take with Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharpe, and none other than JJ Redick. Dressing about who do they think is going to be the face of the NBA. I've not seen this clip. I saw online before on Twitter that people were talking about, and so I don't know if it's from this clip, so I'm not sure if we'll see it or not, but they were talking about how you need to be, I think Shannon Sharpe says it, so we might be able to reach it in this clip, but where you need to be like married or in like a serious committed relationship to be the face of the NBA, which I think is just silly. That doesn't even make any sense to me. Literally no sense. And so I'm just kind of curious to see like what they have to say with regards to this. So let's jump into it and then we can break it down from there.
When we're talking the guys like LeBron, KD, Steph.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we talked about this on our podcast with Tim Legler and Richard Jefferson, two other ESPN people, at the beginning of the season. And this time is approaching where Steph and LeBron, they're not going to be here forever. They're not going to be playing at this level forever. It is interesting because I read all the players' comments over the weekend because they were all asked about it. And they all talked about it has to be organic. Like, we can't choose who the next face of the league is. It has to be organic. And a lot of times, I would say most of the time, it comes with winning. It comes with winning a championship. Kobe became the face of the league because he won. MJ became the face of the league because he won. Magic, Larry, they won. That's why they were the face of the league. The other point about this that I think is important, because Stephen A. has touched on this many times in the past, you have to want to be the face of the league. I had some issues with your comments last year, Stephen A., about Kawhi being the worst superstar ever. Kawhi doesn't want to be the face of the league. He's a two-time finals MVP. Jokic doesn't want to be famous. Jokic doesn't want to be the face of the league. So when you start looking at, well, which guys could be the face of the league? In terms of American players, I think it's Tyrese Halliburton. I think it's Jason Tatum. I certainly think it's Anthony Edwards. It could be someone else. But there has to be, I think, the embrace of being a face of the league. There has to be the personality, the dynamic nature of the player and the person to become the face of the league. None of us thought Steph Curry in 2008, 2009 was going to eventually become the face of the league. But he is. We can't predict these things. My question actually for both of you guys, because we've had 5 straight MVPs that are all internationally born.
Right.
And if you look at the MVP race this year, it's the same situation, right? It's Luka, it's Shea, it's Embiid, or Embiid before he got hurt, it's Giannis, it's Jokic again, right? Is it bad for the league that the best players are internationally born?
Yes, I will address that because it is bad. Not that I personally have anything against it, not at all, but which I'll unpack in a moment. But because now these are two different conversations, but I do totally agree. You have to win. Not only do you have to win, but you have to be dominant and you have to be perceived as special and the true reason why you're winning. And you have to win and dominate like consistently. And that was kind of the problem with Giannis, right? Like, he won a championship and all that, but it wasn't like, it's not in the same way that like a Kobe Bryant did it, or obviously a Michael Jordan, or a LeBron James, or a Steph Curry. And I think Steph Curry is the most unique player in terms of becoming the face, because he's not like Mr. Alpha in your face as, say, like a LeBron or a Kobe or an MJ. But since he was so deadly from the 3-point line, that's like so like unbelievable. It's almost similar to like hitting home runs in Major League Baseball or something, or kind of Patrick Mahomes, just with all the fancy stuff, like hitting all these crazy threes that Steph was doing. To me, is a lot more similar to how flashy a Patrick Mahomes was. Patrick Mahomes kind of became, in a lot of ways, the face of the league before he really became truly Patrick Mahomes, just because of the things that he was doing, because just watching him on the screen was just exciting to watch. And that's kind of what happened with Steph Curry. And he kind of tapped into the whole everyman, babyface assassin, smiling a lot, just perceived as innocent, not like real hard and gangster and this and that, and what's up. Like, it was just a different energy that the kids really identified with. And kids, also always a lot of times identified to like a smaller person. And on the flip side of even the hard mentality was Allen Iverson. We saw Allen Iverson become the face of the NBA, and he obviously brought in a lot of the hip hop culture, the more gangster culture, that kids also buy into, of course. But it was also more like, hey, Iverson can do it. He's so small, I can do it too. And that's kind of what Steph Curry tapped into a lot, right? Like, it's hard, and this has been said a lot, it's hard to identify with like a Kobe Bryant or even a LeBron James because they're so big and strong, especially obviously LeBron, that like I don't see myself as LeBron. But if I see myself as Steph, I go, oh, you know what? Maybe if I just really work on my threes, like I could maybe get there. But like I can't grow 8 inches and gain another 100 pounds of muscle and just become LeBron James. It's not possible. So Steph Curry is also in a lot of ways an exception to that, because I think if Curry was just a really great player but didn't have the three ball, right? Like, let's say he was just an amazing mid-range shooter and just was even a deadly shooter and still scored the same amount of points, I don't know if he would have become as popular, even if they won all those games. To me, the three ball and the type of threes that he was making was just making people go crazy, which then everyone became even more obsessed with him. It was like the synergistic effect in a lot of ways. Similar to Allen Iverson. And again, Allen Iverson was absolutely a face of the NBA. And yet he was not winning all the time, right? Like, it was like he only went to the finals one time, but he was winning individually. He was putting up points, getting MVP, going to the All-Star games, a lot of All-Star games, All-Star MVPs. He was balling out, and you knew that he was also leaving it all on the court, right? That was his whole thing, the whole practice thing, where he was just like, I know that whole thing always gets made fun of, but if you actually really listen to a lot of things that he's saying, there's a lot of truth to it. It's like, you're calling me out for practice, but on the game, I'm literally giving everything I have. I don't take a single play off and do everything I can to help win. And I think, again, that was something that the fans, and again, I know this very personally because I came from Philadelphia, born and raised in Philadelphia, had an Allen Iverson poster on my wall. So like I know, just how, how deep Iverson cut with all of that. So you don't necessarily have to win, but you have to be likable. I think it's a combination. You either have to keep winning and just be dominant, or you have to be really likable and charming, which Iverson was. He kind of brought that, like Steph Curry is likable and charming. And now that leads me into the whole idea of the international players. They're not charming and likable. Not because it's a whole America versus international, all right? I don't really care about that. When Embiid got drafted to the Sixers, I was all for it and like, let's go. But there is this cultural difference. We're speaking different languages even when we're speaking English. And I kind of brought this up in my previous video about Giannis, about being a leader on the team, that I don't think people follow Giannis like they follow a LeBron James. They're born and raised in different cultures, different experiences. Anyone who's really interacted with a lot of international people before, it's just different. Even when you're speaking the same language, it's just different energy, different quirks, different jokes land differently, different experiences. I'm just going to keep saying it. It's different as different as different. So when you're trying to be the face of the NBA, which is American, right? It's national, the National Basketball Association. It's just different. Even when you're hearing an accent come out of someone's voice, you're just like, oh, well, that's not me. That's not American. And I know you can have an accent and be from a different country and still be American. I'm not saying that you can't be, okay? We're not going to turn this into a whole anti-immigration or anything of that regard. But it does land differently. It lands differently when Steph Curry talks and does an interview, or Giannis talks, or Jokic talks, or Luka talks. It's just a different energy. Not to mention, a lot of the international players give off the vibe that they're kind of just like using the NBA, right? That they're renting America in a lot of ways, right? That they're just here on, for college essentially, right? They're just like here to like make the money that they can, right? That's why Jokic wins and he immediately leaves the country, right? Like, he's not Denver. This isn't my city, right? It's just different. Allen Iverson is Philadelphia. He bleeds for Philly. Steph Curry, San Francisco, the Bay Area has become his city. That's his city. It's where he lives his life. His family, his children are born and raised in that city or in that school system, right? Helping out. So it's just different. Kobe was Los Angeles to the core, and Philly. Philly still loves, a Kobe Bryant. So it's just like you feel that connection. You trace those roots to it. And it's just different. And even though Giannis has, ingratiated himself in Milwaukee and stuff like that, and even Jokic to Denver, it just lands differently. Does Luka bleed for Dallas? Is it all about Dallas? Dallas, Dallas, Dallas. These are the streets that I walked when I was a kid, or when I was real young, when I was 5 years old. I used to love watching the Mavericks play. Like, I don't think so. Does he have kids in the school system and a wife that he met there? It's all connected. And when you talk about being the face of something, it's connection building, right? Like, you have to feel connected. And that's why Embiid is, like, to me, Embiid is a really interesting thing because, again, I'm coming from the Philadelphia area, so I remember when Embiid was drafted. And it already hit the ground weirdly because when he was drafted, there was something wrong because he had surgery, and so he was at home or whatever. And they were like, the Philadelphia 76ers draft Embiid. And, like, the camera was on a delay or he wasn't noticed yet, and so he's just like, kind of like shows like no emotion. And I think that's actually, it was like an error, and like it wasn't like, because they even said, I don't think he really knows that he was just drafted or whatnot. But to me, it was actually like a perfect example of like that disconnect where it was just like, all right, Embiid got drafted, and it was just like, okay, and he loves Philly, he loves the city and all of that. But from the very beginning, it felt a little weird. Again, it was just like hearing him talk, hearing him give the interviews. He made like some off-color jokes. Like one time he said, like, they're like, how, and again, it was immaturity, but it was not the same level of immaturity that you see from like a Steph Curry or a LeBron or a KD. They asked him like, how hard do you think you tried? And he's like, I did 69%. And it just like felt like one of those things where, and again, if you've ever interacted with a foreigner, they find different things funny, or if you explain to them something that's like something in American culture, they think they like make it even higher, right? It's like telling like a someone like a knock knock joke or something. Like it's kid like, honestly, is really what it comes down to. There's like another level of immaturity, which again, of course, you can grow out of, because like Luka's not like that, necessarily, or not Luka, Jokic is not necessarily like that. So it just makes it more complicated. But with all of that said, it doesn't mean that just being American is 100% the best. Because then you also have some cultural issues in America, like which we saw with Ja Morant, right? With all the violence, the guns, and this, that. And also even Iverson. I absolutely love Iverson growing up and all of this, but like if Iverson brought that same energy right now to the modern time, I wouldn't like it as much. And maybe I'm just like an old man and it's like, get off my lawn, but like that's why I did love the Steph Currys and even the KDs and the Klay Thompsons of the world. Like, I like building a more innocent, genuine, wholesome product rather than that's why like I have no sympathy for Ja in that regard, because it's just like I don't want that in the NBA. I don't want that energy. And it's not even, it's like, sure, it's about the kids. We can always just say it's about the kids, but it's also like, it's just not something that I want to support. It's not someone that I want to cheer for. That doesn't mean that I want him out of the league or that I want to see him fail and have all bad things happen to him, but like I don't need to like elevate him to like the highest level, as possible. Like it's just not what I'm interested in. It's really not. So again, it's like I think a Canadian can be the face of the league, because I think the accent, and this might be unpopular, but I'm not saying that it affects me personally, right? I'm not saying that I have a problem with it. I'm not saying you better speak English and that's the way it goes. Like, that's not what I'm saying here. I'm trying to give my opinion based on how I think the general population, is experiencing it. And I think, right, if just having an accent alone is enough for people to be like, what the heck, like, and not what the heck, but just like not connect to it as much. And I think people are afraid to make some of those comments, because even Stephen A made that comment about Shohei Ohtani in baseball and said, he doesn't speak English, so he can't be the face. And like, I think he had to like go back and like apologize for that comment. And he's like, he was 100% accurate with that. Like, you can't be the face and you can't be in all the commercials when you can't even speak English, or when you give an interview and it's through a translator. It's just a reality. And you know what? As Americans who speak English, we shouldn't have to apologize for that. It's okay for us to want to be able to celebrate and elevate, people who were born and raised in America, who speak perfect English, right? Like we're allowed to have that. You're allowed to have American pride, national pride, and not have it be a bad thing. It seems like you can have pride in every country but America, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense. Or like, they want to always preserve the language of like French or Chinese or Japanese, right? Preserve that. But in America, you can't preserve English. Like it doesn't really make sense to me. And again, I don't want to turn this into a whole like my country versus another country, or this is all about American pride and this or that. But like again, it's okay. It's okay to also want to see American players do better than foreigner players, right? Like it's okay to say like, oh man, I really hope Jason Tatum it becomes the face of the league over Jokic, and it not be prejudice, right? Like again, if you're the average standard American, you have way more in common than Jason Tatum than Jokic or Luka. And it's no wonder that none of those foreign-born players really care about being the face of the league. I mean, they just don't, because they don't care. They don't care like a Kobe Bryant or a LeBron James or a Steph Curry or any of the other players who the NBA was their life from day one, from the moment they were born, right? It's just different, especially basketball, especially considering basketball, a lot of the players come from less than ideal circumstances, right? Basketball is such a cultural experience, especially in poorer neighborhoods, playing out in the street, having street ball, and again, just being a kid and growing up and all of that. It's just different. I've played in the city. I've played with people from all different walks of life, and I'm sure that exists to a degree internationally, especially depending on where we're talking about here. But I just think, and it's not to say that all players, right? Because then other people will call out like Steph Curry because, but listen, even people like LeBron James and Steph Curry, or LeBron James even like called out people like a Steph Curry because, or other players in general, because he got to live a very, blessed life relative to some of these other players, since his dad was in the NBA and rich. And when he was a little kid, he's shooting half court shots at, at arenas. So I think it's more complex of an issue than we give it credit for, but at the same time, I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think it's okay. I really, really do. But I realized that I didn't have, because since this is really two questions in one, I interjected, and I really do want to hear what Stephen A has to say, as well as Shannon Sharpe. So I'll let them play, and then I probably won't have much to say back because I've already shared my piece. But for those of you who are watching who want to hear what they have to say, let's just get into that.
I would say to you, no. It's not bad for the league if the best players are internationally born. It is bad for the league if the American players give you the impression that they don't want it, that they're indifferent to embracing the responsibility of being the face of the league. That's what's bad, okay? Now, if you're just not good enough, you're not good enough. In other words, compared to Jokic, compared to Giannis, compared to Luka. If they're just better and that's why that one of them become the face, then no problem whatsoever. But if they're the face because not only do they perform, but they have that appeal, that allure, and they care about being the marquee, and you can see that they're more apt to embrace it than the players themselves that are American-born, then we've got a problem, because what the hell has happened to us as a sport, particularly since this is an American-born sport? Obviously, you have a vast majority of the players, particularly of African-American descent, and nobody wants it. That would be problematic for me personally. And Shannon, just to make sure we illuminate what we were talking about, when I went after Kawhi Leonard last year and JJ had an issue with that, I called Kawhi Leonard the worst superstar you could possibly have, not because of his skill set. I know how great he is, but because he does nothing to market the sport per se. And JJ wanted me, he pressed me about that because initially we were talking about his injury and all of this other stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not questioning.
We've worked through it, Shannon.
We worked through it. We worked through it. Ebony and Ivory, Ebony and Ivory, baby. Ebony and Ivory. That's what it is.
Okay.
But in the end, to answer this question, who'll be, the identity of the NBA in the post-LeBron era? I like Ant-Man. I was disappointed with him, JJ, this weekend only in this sense. You go out there, you're shooting the ball left-handed, you're playing around and stuff like that. I know you were playing around. Then you got these quotes about how it's supposed to be an off time, an off weekend. No. The reality is that when you talk about marketing the sport and being a face and being a headline and being a marquee, those things come with it where you seize a moment. You're surrounded by the best in the world, the best players in the world. And you want to do everything you can to show that you are the person on the come up. Like Michael Jordan with Magic and Bird when he said, fellas, there's a new sheriff in town. He wanted to send a message. And that's what America and that's what the basketball world wants to see from that face of the NBA. They want to see somebody that's coming along and saying, I want it. This is what I want. This is what I'm going for, and I want it bad. That's what you want to see. And I think that Ant-Man has the ability to do that, even though he let me down this weekend.
I think both of you guys make very, very good points, very interesting points. I think the thing is that when we saw Magic and Bird, we saw the next guy was going to be Michael Jordan. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We knew who it was going to be. And when Jordan started to leave, we saw it was going to be Kobe Bryant. And then we saw LeBron James. But what we also saw, we saw a guy that had winning championships, MVPs, but we also saw a guy that was going to be here for the next 10 years. And I think the thing is, you're absolutely right. Steph and KD not going to be around for another 10 years. So those guys are going to start to exit stage left. LeBron probably the next 2 years, Steph the next 4 or 5 years, KD same thing as that. But the question that I have for you guys, who has won enough, who has MVPs, who has championships that we can say, okay, he's ready to ascend to that throne? And like you said, guys, what American player has that? Is there an American player outside of Kevin Durant, outside of LeBron and Steph? Now, we know James Harden, but he's going to be leaving, so he's not going to be it. We know Russ, but who's the other American-born players that have won championships, that have MVPs, that we can put in that spot?
Nobody.
You don't, and this is where I'll just end it here, because, like I said, you don't have to win. It obviously helps and is better. Allen Iverson is the best example of this. He was absolutely the face of the NBA. He sold more shoes than Kobe Bryant. I mean, he was selling shoes like crazy for Reebok. He made Reebok cool, okay? Iverson was all over, was the most popular Chinese player. I think to this day, he might still be considered to be the most popular Chinese player. And this was back before they really went all in on trying to market to China. So LeBron James even said growing up, AI was his favorite player. So if you don't want to take my word for it, take LeBron James's word for it. So AI was absolutely, and he did not win a championship. So it's not just about that. Again, it helps, and maybe you can make the argument that nowadays championships are everything. That's fine. I can see that. But it's just an attitude. It's a likability. It's the feeling that you care just as much or even more than the fans, right? It's connecting to the fans. When you saw Iverson play, you did truly feel like he was giving everything he could to play. Everything. And I don't know if you necessarily feel that about maybe some of these other players. Or Iverson always wanted to put a show on the All-Star game. Again, winning the MVP, I think, a couple times. Putting up like 50 points or something. Again, back when that was actually a hard thing to do. So it was just different. It just all landed and hit differently, right? When you hear Anthony Edwards say, yeah, the All-Star weekend is just kind of like a day off. It's just kind of like some time off. We don't really care. It's just like, ugh. No fan wants to hear that. No fan wants to hear that. Why should we care more than they do? And that's the thing. And the very last point I'll make is we see this in TV and movies. And ultimately, the NBA is an entertainment company. It's an entertainment product. And we see this in movies and TV shows that sometimes you watch a movie or TV show and it's not good. and you might not even really know why. You're like, well, this show just didn't land for me. And a lot of the reasons why, it's because the characters don't like each other, and you can see this. And so the question is like, well, if the characters don't like each other, then me as a viewer, then why do I care about what happens to this person? Or if this character is just an unlikable character, it's like, well, why do I care if this person succeeds or fails in this movie or TV show? Like, I don't care, right? All the really good shows that we really like, the ones that we become obsessed with, it's because the characters typically care about each other, and or the character itself, the fans really care about. And we want to see that character succeed, right? Game of Thrones is an example. You wanted to see Jon Snow survive and overcome all of the issues, right? Like, you wanted to see that. Can't think of another quick example. You want that. But when a show doesn't care about their characters, or the characters within that show don't care about one another, you're like, well, if they don't care about each other, why do I care? And that's what the problem is with basketball right now is. It's all about the money. It's all about the fame. It's all about the Instagram, the clout, the this, the that. And if it's like that's all what it's about, then it's like, well, then why should I care? I don't feel connected to Jokic. If Jokic was my guy and won, and if he won for Philadelphia and we were all excited, but then he was just like, oh, I don't even want to do the parade, I would feel pretty crappy about it. Take on the flip side, a Jason Kelce who won the Super Bowl with the Eagles and gave one of the most passionate speeches at the parade, lived for it, screamed so hard his voice went hoarse and was dead. As a fan, you connect to that. You go, that guy is my guy. He cares. He wanted to truly win for us. He is our leader. He is our hero. He was wearing a Mummers Parade, which is a Philadelphia thing, outfit. More Philly stuff. He was like, let's go. Same thing with Bryce Harper getting choked up and getting tears in his eyes talking about the Philadelphia fans for the Phillies games and just saying how badly you could see it. And it was real. It was genuine. He's just like, I want to win for this city so badly. You don't see that for Giannis. You don't see that with Luka. You don't see that with Jokic. You don't see that with other American players right now. You don't see it. That's why the NBA is suffering. That's why people are less connected to. And that's why people to this day are still obsessed with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, all those players, because we believe they care. That's what it comes down to. You have to care. Those are my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. If you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing, please let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. As I said, we are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.